You see, if she allows me to lead, she's trusting me. But more than that, she's trusting herself.
The stories that we're making, right? Like that to me is like for my whole life, like I've always been my dad was a storyteller, and I'm a writer. Like I like poetry. I'm a creative, so I always loved words and I wanted to share. I did write something down. I wanted to share with you about the movie, because I know you always have the movie things when you start.
Oh yeah.
And the movie Life is Beautiful.
I have that. That's
and how much it validated to me, because I felt like that's what my dad said to me in no uncertain terms, like, you make up the story. Because when I was 8 years old, he took me to we were in Montserrat, and he had been asked to do some stonework there, and he was contemplating moving there, so we all went. And he said, okay, to my sister and I, do you guys want to get up to the crack of dawn? And I was like, yeah, I want to see the crack of dawn. What's the crack of dawn? And he's like, oh, okay, well, it's this, when the sun hits the horizon, this big crack goes and the sun comes up over the water, but you got to get up. I think it was his way of getting us out of bed at 5 a.m, because he's an early riser. And my sister's like, there's no crack of dawn. My sister was always the skeptic, and I was always I believe, right? So we get up, we go sit on the wall, the sun rises, and I swear to this day, I heard a crack. I was like, I heard it. And he's like, I know, right? And my sister's like, I never heard anything. What are you talking about? Right? But I always think of that story, because I always think that was his spirit. That was his heart. His heart was that he came from war-torn London. He was a 5-year-old running around while the bombs were being dropped. And he always had this vision that he was going to be more than that. And he worked so hard at that. And he always had his end, that he would never settle for like, thinking he couldn't learn in school. He was beaten, he said, by every teacher because he had behavior problems, because he couldn't learn. He had dyslexia. He had all these things standing in his way, but he never let anything stand in his way. And he worked, and he was like he immigrated to Canada, met my mom on the boat. It was like instant love, and they just went ahead with their lives. And they never, I don't know, I think a lot of times in those days, people there was more like focused on the end. I think it was there was times like you didn't have time to go, well, what if, right? Like,
well, if you step back and look at it, okay, look at the sequence of events that happened in the early 20th century.
Yeah.
First, you had World War I.
Yeah.
Then you had the Spanish flu.
Yeah.
Okay. Then you had the Depression. Okay. And in America, you had a Dust Bowl. Okay.
Yeah.
All these things happened in the world. And so when you think of it that way, look at the consciousness of humanity at that time. We've been through hell.
Yes.
Okay. So they've already been through hell. And in World War I, in 1914, on Christmas Day, the Germans and the Allies came together. They put their guns down, started singing, sharing their food, and so it got into minds, we don't have a problem. They have the problem.
Yeah.
So then it became very hard to convince people to go to war.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
So then here comes World War II.
Oh, yeah.
And, you step back and look at it and you realize why they dragged their feet, because of the past. And in America, it always has been, it's none of our business. That's over there.
Yeah.
Okay. If they're coming over here to fuck with shit, then it's our business, but it's none of our business. You know, and they wanted it to be, the government wanted it to be our business. You know, so this is where false flags began from the government, because they blew up the Lusitania. You know, they were sending weapons in the Lusitania, but people died. So they could say, oh, look, those horrible germs. And it was horrible what they were doing.
Yeah.
You know, they're just indiscriminately, I'm going to blow you up because you're helping them.
Yeah, my dad remembers the Americans coming in. He just wrote a book about his experience about in London, and he remembers the Americans coming in at the very end, and they had boxes of, they were behind his house, and they had all these crates of gum and chocolate bars.
Yeah.
And he said in the book, his book, he says that it was actually the American officers that were like very sympathetic for the kids, like he was a little kid, right? And they were just, they'd come every day and give them stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. And they were kind of the heroes at the end. They had been through so much. Like London's if you think about England itself as an island and the power the Germans had, like, and these times are marked on my dad. And yet now he's not making the connection in what's going on with the government right now, right? He's just sort of, I don't know, he's more like the mainstream. He listens to the BBC, but
it comes back to that humanity faced these things back then.
Yeah.
And it culminated in World War II and the Nuremberg trials.
Right. And that's coming up a lot right now in my feed today. Nuremberg is coming up all over the place.
Well, Nuremberg is where mankind, mainly the Allies, okay, stated in court, right? This is an international court proceeding.
Yes.
And we have determined that it's not okay for you to follow orders.
Right.
You have a mind and you think with it.
Yes.
So you going along with it means you were okay with it.
Right.
Or you're guilty.
It's not only your
you gave your energy to them. You gave your power to them.
And plus, it's not only your right to question the government, it's your obligation.
Obligation.
You're obligated to do that now.
Right.
And that's what they were saying then. Why didn't you say something?
Right.
And yet look at the censorship, like look at the censorship that, you know.
You can look at pictures of Eisenhower when he made the towns like Auschwitz walk through the death camp, because they all said we didn't know that was going on there, right?
Yeah.
And if you look at the German people who are walking through there, most of them are pissed off.
Yeah.
Some of them are crying and upset, you know, but most of them are pissed off. And that's because they agreed with everything. And they believed in it, right?
Yeah.
And I read this guy's dissertation on it, and he did a big old study on the German people.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
It was very dry. It was really hard to get through. But once you finished it, you realize, especially when you stumble on these laws of mind and stuff, you realize that it was going to happen regardless.
Yes.
Because for hundreds of years, they had been turning the Jew into the bad guy in their fairy tales and their stories.
Yeah.
They believed Jews killed Christ.
Yeah.
Okay. And this was a problem in Germany. What do we do with the problem?
Yeah.
Well, we're going to try this. They can become full German citizens if they become Christians. Okay. So a lot of them did, so they could get those benefits, but they weren't really being Christians. They were still following their Jewish traditions at home.
Yeah.
And many of them did not.
Yeah.
Okay. And so it was still a problem.
Yes.
So when Hitler stepped up and said, I have a final
Solution.
solution, everyone knew what he was talking about.
Yeah.
The final solution to this problem.
Yes.
You know? And so to them, they thought they were doing right and good. They killed Jesus.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
They saw it objectively, you know what I mean? And been
Yes.
feeding it for hundreds of years. And,
Yes.
you know, it was just going to happen regardless.
Yeah. It was crazy times.
Like, it really was, because you could see how it, you know, it trickled. First, let's get rid of the mentally retarded. Nobody wants to make babies with him. You know, we might have more mentally retards. Oh, well, okay. You know, no, it's not okay.
Yeah, and then it just kept going.
Right.
They kept moving the goalposts, which ironically you see happening now. The goalpost gets moved, you know, and the language, the intricacy of the language in mainstream media is keen. It's like I watch it now from like I just watch neutrally. I just listen and I just watch, and I watch questions being asked, and there's no answer. Like the answer is not the answer. So then it's like, okay, well, then I start thinking about, well, why is, you know, it's almost like in an internal. So when you change your internal view, the external view changes to show you all the stuff you were judging, right? Like as soon as you stop judging, you're forced to look at all the stuff you were judging.
Right. Well, a lot of us don't understand that because we didn't say anything.
Right.
We accepted it.
Yes.
You didn't necessarily think like that or be like that or anything like that, but you listened to it.
Yeah.
You gave it attention.
Right. Right. Yes.
And now it's in your purse.
Yes.
Growing. It's going to show you, you know.
Yeah.
And
yeah. Well,
now it's in everybody's face, you know.
Exactly. So every day it's a rewrite.
So you notice, like in Canada or in England, where they have a healthcare system, you handed your healthcare over to another.
Yeah.
You've been bowing to them.
Yeah.
Okay, so here he comes.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you can just bow to this too. Huh?
Yeah.
Oh, you don't like it? I don't wear a mask? Too bad.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I was thinking, a thought that came up for me was, if you give any institution or any person too much power, they will abuse power. Like abusing power is just, that's just like,
you don't give them your power.
Right.
Not ever.
Right.
You know?
And for me,
that's the beauty of democracy.
Right. And I feel like that's having a voice for me. Okay. So when I was young, authoritarianism and tyranny and dictatorship was all acceptable within even my family. Like my dad was kind of the dictator. He told us, and he, you know, we had a little bit of room, like, you know, but I had to learn that internally to find that voice. And then once I found it, it's like, once you find it, it's like turning on your, Gail and I always talk about this. I always imagine it as turning on your lightsaber in Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
It takes a little while, and then you're like, whoa, and you're knocking things over with it and yelling and doing, like, saying inappropriate things because you have this new voice. But then what I experienced last night was the refinement of that voice, right? The refinement of being able to use the laws of the mind and stay connected in one heart, like in your heart.
Yeah, it's like you put the lightsaber down, and now we're gonna tango.
That's what makes us tough. rich fellas come up and die, and their kids ain't no good and they die out. But we keep a-comin'. We're the people that live. They can't wipe us out, they can't lick us. We'll go on forever, Pa, 'cause we're the people.